Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Let me apologize to you and through you to our colleagues for what happened last week. I cannot understand. Let me first thank so many people who have been in touch with me because they got worried that something must have happened and you covered up for me by quickly cutting the program. No, I'm in good health. It's technical issues. I was just as frustrated as you know, most of you. And I must thank the several people who stood in for me, Ambassador Igali, Professor Akin Akinyemi, Ambassador Akin Akinyemi, Ambassador Leo, several other people who stood in line and kept the program going. I keep my fingers crossed. I will even keep my legs crossed that today it will be fine and itch free. So once again, let me thank you for standing in for me.
Yes, I think touch wood, like we say here in the UK, we wouldn't have that situation reoccur today. Sir, I want to start this evening with a particular question that relates to Africa that was raised with me by someone in the course of the week. And the point stems from a call by Kenyan President William Ruto, where he announced that Kenya would be removing visa requirement for all African visitors by the end of the year. And that stood out and that struck me. And I thought, oh, this is an interesting one. What are the benefits of that to the rest of Africa? And should other African countries actually be following suit? Is it workable to have such a process in place?
It is a magnificent objective. Culturally, economically, on all fours, it's something we should pursue. It's an objective we should pursue. And there is nothing that will give my heart joy to have that done. It will even be a magnificent adjunct to the to recall the decree that the treaty that was signed amongst African countries, for free trade. This will be a magnificent adjunct of it. Having said that, all two things I'd like to say is look at what happened with the European Union. With all their technical, especially at the border, with the technical equipment that they have, how long it took them to achieve, and it's even then limited to the Schengen area. It doesn't even cover the whole of the European Union area. And having done that, because of the problems they ran into with immigrants, southern European countries like Italy, like Spain, like southern France, like Malta, are already threatening to pull out of the Schengen area because they said not all of them are bearing the burden of immigrants coming in from other parts of the world into Europe. So if they could have that kind of problem, they could run into that kind of problem. All it then says to us in Africa is, before we go into adventure like this, let us try and learn a lesson from the experiment of other countries. You will also recall that Britain, one of the pillars of the Brexit movement was the question of immigrants and the need for them to put a lid on immigrants coming into Britain. And that led to what I hope the British will still regard as a monumental, disaster in terms of decision making on their part, and the drift towards the right wing that we can see within the Conservative Party, where it is children of immigrants who themselves are now in the most vociferous voices of being anti-immigrant in British politics. So we should learn a lesson from that. Africa is such a huge country, and we shouldn't pretend that we're all saints and that there are no, sinners amongst us, amongst our travelers. That there will be no smugglers, that there will be no currency, people fiddle around with currency, people who fiddle around with drugs, that there will be no such people amongst us. And all it's going to take is for a country to be targeted. And quite correctly, I didn't use the word targeted in a negative sense, but for the citizens of one country to be identified with I'm not speaking in a theoretical way. Go around the world and see whether it is in Malaysia or Indonesia whether it is in Singapore, find out which nationals are on the death row for drug smuggling. Go to India, go to Pakistan, and see which countries, which nationals are in their jail for criminal activities. Because the moment you then start making an exception, things then may start breaking apart. So while I welcome the move by Ruto, who is starting, and I've said it here before, let me repeat it, is starting to be a combination of the Nkrumah of the secretary of the Patrice Lumumba, of even the young Tom. I'm hoping that his vision for Africa is achievable.
Thank you for that, sir. But one thing that strikes me, I'm just looking at my notes here. Democratic Republic of Congo scraps visa requirements for Kenyans. Ghana, South Africa have signed a visa waiver deal. These are things that happened a while back. And it's striking me that these countries are starting to look at this visa-free arrangement and clearly see some benefit in it. And I wonder if other countries that don't get on board now may be losing on the benefits that may be, even if it's just to trade, the benefits to people just discovering what other countries look like, not believing that their country is the only country in the world that's worth talking about. And to what extent this is going to become something that other countries now start to drive towards. Hopefully, they wouldn't hit a major roadblock that makes them to reverse their decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, in fact, you are right, and the leaders of these countries are right in the sense of the porosity of African boundaries. How many custom officers, how many immigration officers do they have to police their boundaries? So maybe they're just, looking at the situation in which they find themselves and are deciding that they might as well stop wasting money on custom officers and immigration officers who end up just collecting bribe anyway to let people pass through. Not to talk about the how porous the boundaries are that you can't even police the boundaries in any case. So you might as well make a virtue out of necessity. So maybe it's workable after all.
I'll keep an eye on this space and see how it goes. And maybe sometime in future, we'll bring this topic back after we've seen how this has played out over the coming months. But before I leave Kenya, I want to talk about the visit of King Charles III and what some have described as one, acknowledging the role of the British government in the colonial era and the sufferings caused to the people there, but saying that he stopped very short of apologizing for the things that happened at the time. And it struck something in my mind, sir. And I'm going to bring two countries to you, but we'll deal with Kenya first, and then we go to Tanzania. What is your reaction, sir, to the visit of Prince Charles to Kenya and the stance he's taking about things that had happened in the past?
Well, although you say you're going to separate the two, I am not in terms of giving a reply. Because Germany seems to have taken the lead in what I would call a moral issue. It's not just Tanzania that they started. The Germans started with Namibia, where they not only apologized, but they were prepared to pay they were prepared to pay a ransom for the evil that the Germans did in Namibia. And they repeated the apology in Tanzania, in spite of the fact that apologizing has legal consequences in terms of you having to pay reparation. The British attitude has been different. And this to me shows what I will call a paucity of spirit, a meanness of spirit by the British. I don't know whether it's because they're such a small island and they feel that they can't afford to pay for all the evils that they perpetrated in the past, whether in terms of slavery or in terms of colonial brutalities. We are not even omitted. We are not exempt from that. Because remember the old women who were massacred. But let's not trivialize the issue, because one will say the OD massacre is just a small thing compared to, you know, what else was done in other parts of Africa. But then how about slavery? West Africa suffered most of the slavery of the past. But people have been using, the British especially have been using different legal niceties to avoid dealing with this issue of reparation. And as I said, it may be that they will have to pay so much that it will bankrupt their economy if they have to pay reparation for this. But it has struck me, the last queen glorified all over the world, refused refused to go as far. It is his son, King Charles III, who has taken the lead in recognizing how bad was British behavior. And to some extent, one shouldn't blame the royalty, because the British royalty does not rule, it reigns. So they have no independent views on issues like this. It's usually the government. But at least Charles has shown that to say, I recognize that what we did was wrong, was still within the purview of the royalty. The Queen refused to go that far, even though she and her family were beneficiaries of slavery. So while the Germans have been prepared not only to recognize the evil that they've done, apologize for it, and be prepared to pay reparation, the British have refused to go that far. Now, what has baffled me, and I welcome the views of our colleagues on this platform, is given the evil that was done during the Mau Mau revolution in Kenya. Why has Kenya has such a warm, intimate relationship with the British? Why? I don't understand it. That's where the Queen went as a princess and left as a queen. That is where Prince William proposed to the Princess of Wales, his present wife, was going to become a queen later. Why? Why have they found a welcoming hand in Kenya? I even read somewhere that even up till now, the what will you call it? The legislation left by the British that banned the word Mau Mau is still in existence in Kenya, such that even Kenyans whisper, they whisper the two words Mau Mau, because when the British were there, it was a death sentence for you to be caught, you know. And yet, Jomo Kenyatta went to jail because of the Mau Mau uprising. And he's had his son being the president. And yet they haven't, even they internally have not found any reason to come to terms and listening to the commentary that was being done even during the president visit. I understand that the land that was seized from the Kikuyus, which actually led to the Mau Mau uprising. The land was given to the British, number one, and the Kenyan loyalists to grow tea, and that land is still in the hands of the loyalists, and that is one of the demands by the Kikuyus. We want our land back. You compensated the so-called loyalists for their loyalty to the British Crown by giving them our land. And 60 years after independence, that land was still there. It's still in the hands of the loyalists. Now, I don't understand it. Something is basically wrong with we Africans. It's one good. I mean, it's one thing to have a forgiving spirit, but it's another thing to not to be prepared to reckon with history, our own history. So, basically, my own was because if what they did to us, we had done to them, till today they wouldn't have forgiven us. They will not have forgiven us. But we are supposed to forgive. And not only forgive, we are supposed to forget. Why? So that in the next age, they can come back and do the same thing to us. And we will still be expected to forgive. I simply don't comprehend it.
I've had some people say, sir, that when you look at the apologies that are coming now, particularly to a lot of the African countries, that it's nothing more than these same colonial powers starting to position themselves for the rise of the African continent, because it's clear that Africa is rising. It is clear that the future of Africa is very bright compared to what we're seeing in some of the other developed economies, and that these apologies are really a way of getting back to the resources of Africa. I don't know what your take is on that, sir, in terms of whether or not we should be embracing these apologies, or we should be accepting the apologies at somewhat of an arm's length away from them coming in and then signing trade deals with us that allows them to continue to take the resources of Africa out.
No, I get your point, but don't forget what I said, that it is only Germany that has offered apology because of the legal implications. The moment you offer apology, the issue of reparations comes in. And so Germany has been prepared to offer, apology and be prepared to pay reparation. France has not said I'm sorry. The same thing Britain has not said I'm sorry. The same thing, if you recall, the debate in Belgium, I believe, a few months ago, about whether the king will use the word apology or will simply, they've come up now with that phrase of, we recognize that what happened should not have happened. avoiding the use of the term apology. So they never did. And if I may turn around your argument or your position, I think then we should not start saying that is assuming we are in a position to do so. Because what is it that they say? Beggars have no choices. But if African beggars have choices, maybe we will get to that stage where we can then say, no, we are not going to sign any trade agreement with you unless there is that apology for past slave trade. We may even be prepared to forgive reparations because they are, again, I know I've been involved in some debate about who do you pay the reparation to? Who? Is it we Africans whose forefathers sold our kith and kin into slavery? Or is it the chaps who are in, the United States, West Indies, Guyana, and so on, who are victims of the slave trade who should be paid reparations? That debate is still on the table. We may be prepared to waive it, but let them say, we are sorry. We apologize for what our great-grandfathers did to your great-grandfathers.
Thank you. So let me go back to Tanzania. And one of the reasons I brought up Tanzania is the fact that earlier on in the year, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Tanzania. She was talking about a multi-million dollar trade agreement with Tanzania to help Tanzania and American countries export goods and services to Tanzania. And then more recently, we've then had the German president apologizing to Tanzania. Are we starting to see a battle for Tanzania? And how strategic is Tanzania to the rest of Africa, that the United States is going there trying to make a trade deal, or have made a trade deal, and then we now have the German president also going there? And I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months from now, there will be another country that would then also be going to Tanzania to try to strike some deals. But it seems that Tanzania has been spoken of very little in the last few months. What's your take on that, sir?
I don't see any, Tanzania does not come within my radar as to call for special treatment by the United States or Germany. So I don't know. It's probably, maybe it's just coincidence. If you say South Africa, if you say Kenya, I would be able to see what you're talking about. But Tanzania, it doesn't ring a bell with me.
So there was a piece of news earlier on in the week in Russia, where there was a mob that attacked an airport, and they were attacking Israelis that had just landed in a plane that just arrived from Israel. And I saw that, and it struck me that now the war is spilling out to other countries, and we're now having an increase in the attack on Israelis who are nowhere near the war, who are nowhere near Gaza, who are now at risk of the suffering. Meanwhile, when we look at the Ukraine-Russia war, I don't think we've seen something similar in other countries. And just wanted to draw a parallel between those two things. Why is the case of Israel different?
Well, not too many Ukrainians all over the world, and not too many Russians all over the world outside their areas of locality. Now, this plane, if we are to get the facts straight, this plane was coming from Tel Aviv. So there is that direct connection with Israel. And to that extent, people who are angry about what's happening in Gaza could find a linkage between where that plane was coming from and what was going on. Now, having cleared that, let me also say that I am on all fours with you in terms of warning that the plane episode is an indication of the danger of this of the danger that what is going on in the Middle East may start to spread, especially as people boil over. People don't have to be their government does not have to instigate them. People don't have to be instigated. Even I am in an emotional mood on this issue. Presumably, I should be ashamed to say that there have been times I have sat in front of the television set and I have not been aware that tears have been flowing down my face as I have watched little babies who are not, some of them have just been born and they are already wrapped in the funeral shroud. Not to talk of today, I was watching one, a little girl, 6 months old, whose hand has been amputated. There was another one. The baby is 2 months old, paralyzed, a girl. So you can imagine what the rest of her life would be, because shrapnel cut into her spine. What life does she have? Last week, before we had our own glitch, there was something I was going to say, and it's not too late for me to say so. I think it was an error of judgment for the Arabs not to have persuaded Russia not to veto that American resolution before the Security Council. Why do I say so? The Arabs had got two things from that resolution, which I'm not sure that Israel actually would have been happy with. The first one was humanitarian pause to allow food, water, etc. to come in. Yes, I understand what the Arabs are complaining about, that it should have been a ceasefire and not just a pause. But the thing is, the pause did not have a time limitation. And it would have been possible that each time each time the Israelis wanted to push and start this thing, you could have drawn attention to the fact that since it was the Security Council that imposed the pause, it is the Security Council that should lift the pause. And because you will not get a unanimity for the pause to be lifted, the pause cannot be lifted. That's the first point. The second was that there must not be a compulsory shift of population. Those two, to me, were critical points that the Arabs got, that they should have put pressure on Russia. Please don't veto this. This is in our interest. But instead, the old boys game, you vetoed my own, I will veto yours, played out. That Russia vetoed the American one, because the American one also vetoed the Brazilian resolution that had 12 votes. Now, who's been paying the price since then? Is it the Russians sitting in the cool atmosphere in the Security Council chamber, or is it the Americans who have been having, festivals? There are festivals, what have you. Who has been paying the price? Is the Arabs. And that is why, that often people say the Arabs never found even a little something that they could hold on to. That instead, they forfeit everything. That was what I was going to say last week before, as I said, we had the technical glitch. Well, It's possible that one of you may say, well, sorry, sir. Netanyahu has said he's not going to accept ceasefire, irrespective of who put that ceasefire forward. Fine, let it be on his head. Let him be held responsible for it. But the danger for Netanyahu, the danger for the United States, the danger for the United Kingdom is now that their streets are now being flooded by anti-Israeli demonstrations, not just by Arabs alone, but by Arabs, by even Israelis, and by neither. In other words, human beings are saying enough. Enough. And I think I recall saying on this program, I used the analogy of the tortoise. I won't use it now because my niece has said I shouldn't use it. But you will recall what I said, that there comes a time when people who are on your side get fed up that, you're overdoing it. And I think the world had got to that stage of telling the Israelis, you are overdoing it. And is then going to be a danger, not even for the Israelis alone, but for all of us. Because when people boil over, I am not sure that they look at the target of their anger anymore, because they hold everybody now responsible for what is happening. And I think we've got to that stage. I hope next tomorrow or Saturday, the Security Council of the UN, in order to rescue itself, to rescue its own integrity, will come up with a resolution. How far that will get us, I don't know, since Netanyahu has said he's not going to accept.
So on that point, I feel that there is no way Netanyahu will withdraw from this war right now, not having achieved any of the objectives that he set out, not having achieved the release of the hostages that would be acceptable to the people of Israel who live under the bombs that are dropping on them and the missiles that are dropping on them on a regular basis. I don't think
but the thing is, a week ago, Hamas has offered to release all the hostages they have in exchange for their own hostages being held by the Israelis. They have offered that. And you would recall that within Israel itself, the families of the hostages being held in Hamas have now been calling on Netanyahu that they want their people back.
Very true, sir. Before I leave this topic, just one quick point. Now, a lot of foreign governments have started withdrawing their own nationals from within Gaza. What message is that sending to Israel?
Israel I was hesitating to say this because one needs to be careful not to be accused of instigation. But Netanyahu should bear in mind that there are more Jews outside Israel than there are Jews within Israel. And if the street boils over all over the world, it is a danger not to the Jews in Israel, but to the Jews outside Israel. It is a danger. You should keep that in mind.
Let me end on this one. We've got 5 minutes to go, but I want to end on the news that Pope Francis announced that, or at least his office, that he will be attending the COP28 summit in Dubai later on this year. First time a Pope would do that, and also happening in the Middle East in the middle of all that's going on at the moment. Is that going to do anything to shift the needle in the direction of better climate control and having better measures in place?
We seem to have got to this stage in the world where we have no respect for anybody. And gone are the days when for the Pope to say a word is for the world to pay attention. But I recall that the Pope wrote an encyclical, Jubilate Deo, let us praise God. And it was a shortened version of, let us praise God for his creation. And he was calling attention to the fact that we need to save the world that the God created. We didn't create the world. God created the world and he created it for us. I always keep trying not to go biblical on this program, but recall in Genesis that it was God who created the world. Let there be light, and there was light. Initially, there was just mist all over. It had no form, and God gave it form. And then after God created human beings, I'm not sure how many people get that God created the world before he created human beings. It was after he created the Garden of Eden that he then created Adam and Eve and put them in the Garden of Eden. It wasn't the other way around. So we should bear that in mind, that God created the world before he created us. And if we destroy the world, there is nothing to save us. And what is even more important, more critical, is that God can create another world. Because if we destroy the world, we will destroy ourselves. So I'm not surprised that the Pope will want to invest his authority, his, gravity, it's all in all on this particular topic that he feels we are not paying enough attention to. And that perhaps, even if we won't listen to him as Pope, we will listen to him as an old man, because there is no culture in the world where we don't venerate old men. So maybe we will venerate his views, we will venerate him, and come to the conclusion that we need to pay attention to what he's saying.
Thank you very much, sir. On that note, we're really just bang on time for the program this evening. Want to say a big thank you to everyone who has joined. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate that. We'll be back same time next week for another program. But just in case you may have missed other people outside of West Africa, the times changed during the week. So some of us are now 1 hour behind, and we've changed in the UK here from British summertime, and we're now GMT. So in case you joined the program late or wondering why the YouTube broadcast was starting at 6 instead of 7, that's why that was. It's just the change in British summertime to GMT. Once again, thank you everyone for this evening. Thank you very much, sir. Good night, sir.
Wakanda.